So I'd like to welcome Gina and friends to this podcast discussion about the sovereign body. Those of you who aren't seeing us right now, who are listening, I have a really special panel today of former students from my course who have enriched my awareness of the work I do so much. And I wanted them to come in and kind of continue enriching this concept and practice of the sovereign body, something I talk a lot about. I haven't found many other people that talk a lot about it. So I'm kind of bringing in others to help me inform what they experience it to be. And in the last course, I think you were all in, was it summer or was it, yeah? Okay. It was the summer 2022. And Gina would keep asking questions about the sovereign body that kept pulling me, pulling more clarity out of me, which I really appreciated. So Gina, I want you to introduce yourself first and just kind of tell us a bit about you and what the sovereign body means to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gina. I identify as a plant person. I've been on the path with the plants for not very long, but the last couple of years have been pretty intense in terms of, what I've grown to understand and what I know of that world to be just unending and infinite. So, the journey continues. I also have an online herbal remedy and skincare business. I was brought to understand the idea of the sovereign body in Luis's 6-week course. And I had never really understood it to be a separate entity. I had to actually take some time to contemplate the idea that there was a separate entity that I was a part of. And at first that seemed a little too out there for me. But the more and more I got into the work, the more and more I got into the somatic work, the more and more it just started to make sense. And I started to actually try to work in synergy with this being. And the more respect that I was able to give the being, and the more the position of witnessing the being, the more I was able to actually sync up with the being. And so even if I'm at a loss in a moment where I don't know what's going on between me and this being, if I attempt to operate from that premise, I usually get some whisper of just the next best step. And sometimes that's kind of all we have in terms of, that's all I have at times to draw on.
I would love that. I just jotted down like me and this being, because I wonder before I call anyone else into this conversation, can you tell us somatically when you notice the me and you notice the being and the difference, like what does that feel like to you to feel that sovereignty of the body?
It feels like a whisper from a different place. It feels like something is coming in to communicate. And depending on, my emotional orientation, I might be more or less willing to engage. So for instance, I started doing cold exposure. So I started doing cold showers. And in the beginning, I was just went all the way up to the coldest setting on the dial. And my body was like, we are not about that life. But I wanted to push through because I wanted the benefits. And so I had to, again, remind myself that there's a being here that actually has something to say. Mm-hmm. So I went to the colder side of warm. And I'm like, okay, do you like this? Yes, we like this. And what I learned was that titration actually allowed me to go further with the cold. So after 2 hours on the cooler side of warm, I was able to turn the dial and hardly notice at all how much colder the shower had become, because I had partnered with this being instead of attempting to dominate and tell it what I wanted it to do, because that's a lose-lose proposition in my experience.
That's so powerful. It's such a good example, by the way, for all of us listening. Because, when Gina talks about uh, the whisper, I often talk about the body speaking through sensations. And these whispers are often sensational. They're not words. Sometimes they're words, but they're often sensational. And so noticing when the shower was being, if I'm imagining doing that practice and I'm turning it to cold and I feel the constriction, I feel the activation, that's the less than a whisper at that point. But that's my body saying like, whoa, wait a minute. And then I love the question, like, do you like this? I mean, it's extremely unorthodox to say to your body, do you like this? It's just not what any of us even grew up thinking we could say to a body, because we didn't think the body was different. So we didn't even notice if it liked it or not. And then, just to highlight the word dominating, this is part of that decolonial practice somatically of how do I start relating instead of dominating to this physical being that I share this lifetime with. Um, that's so beautiful, Gina. I want to bring in the next person. And if I call on you and you have nothing to say, just say not ready. That's okay with me too. I'm feeling called to ask Ishel, to tell me like what's coming up in you, either from what Gina just said or what you already came in with your own practice of the sovereign body. Curious.
Yeah, I I have been in a similar practice with my relationship with time, and how I have noticed in the past this push and this domination of the body to push through. And that has been deeply related to my experience of time. And so everything that Gina was talking about, I was thinking about it in the same way of the practice that I have been doing around time. And instead of dominating time and manipulating time, I have been really working with time as my friend. And so then bringing that practice in with the body, and just there's just so many ways that our culture has colonized us to dominate our own bodies. And that practice of really connecting to what it is that the body wants it's just so deeply different than everything that I have been socialized and conditioned to think about my body. And so yeah, I mean, we've been working on this since last summer, but it still feels, it's just a daily practice in that the conditioning is so strong and dropping into old patterns is so strong. So I'm just very appreciative for the ongoing community support and the way that we start to sort of break down even the language around relationship with our body, and the ways that we sort of hold that dominator culture in the way we talk about ourselves and our bodies. And
I have to ask you, I love the idea of time as friend, the same way we're looking at the body as like relative or friend. Time is also a being to have a relationship with. Tell us what that means for you, whether it's like an actual practical practice or how it feels in your body or both.
yeah, so I have been really exploring my roots in the Mayan calendar, and the Mayan calendar is deeply rooted in this idea or concept or felt knowledge of time being an entity. And the whole calendar itself is really a description of the characteristics of time and how it sort of moves through its day every day. And that's in relationship with the sun and with the moon. Like they're all deeply connected. And like really starting to get a sense of that deeper relationship between our planet and the other entities that we're sort of moving through the universe with. And so that sense of relationship really sort of starts to blow away the dominator culture in the way that we domination is so deeply rooted in all that we do. And so by being able to have a relationship with time, I'm giving my body space to sort of show up and be present and start to communicate and share and listen to what its needs are. It's been a big shift for me.
It's so gorgeous. As you're talking, it's just this whole awareness that time exists without us. It's like it's a being outside of us. It's not something that we own. And so when you're talking about the sun and the moon and all the other beings and the way the calendar is like, even when I think of the visuals I have seen, it's like this beautiful sacred altar to the being of time and the spirit of time. Such a different way of relating to time than how we've kind of like literally cut it up in our culture. So that's something that's just settling in me as you're sharing this. I think it's really important. I really appreciate that. It's beautiful. Okay, my body wants to pick Laura next. I'm letting my body choose. Tell us what you're hearing, Laura. Where is this practice for you?
Well, gosh, there are so many different things that I feel like I can share, but one of the things that I've been working with is that I have very sensitive, I have sensitivity to smell, and certain smells like bother me. And a few months ago, I bought a new shampoo, and I looked at the ingredients to make sure the smells were things that I could like. And I got the shampoo, and one of the smells was vanilla, which I like, but there was something about this vanilla that was a little musky that bothered me a little bit. But so what I did actually, though, is I thought there's some animal part of me that's reacting to this musky smell. And I said, and I had the thought of like, my not liking it was me trying to suppress that part of myself. And I just took a breath. Breath and try to allow myself to expand. And I swear it's not that I love it, and it's not, but it just doesn't bother me. I just don't notice it as much. And, it wasn't me dominating my body. It wasn't like, I'm going to use it anyways. I don't care if you don't like it. But it wasn't me. And it also wasn't me going, okay, I know you don't like it, I'm going to throw it away. But it was me saying, hey, there's one part of yourself that maybe you just need to allow to come into being, I guess, maybe I could say. And I've worked with it. I see chiropractor once a week, and I notice I go into the room sometimes and I can smell like a cigarette, like the person before me was a smoker, and I have the same reaction to cigarettes. But I went in there and I said, well, maybe can I use that with this? And just taking a breath and allowing myself to be expansive with that smell really just made it go away. And I was actually much more grounded in that session than I think I've ever been in my chiropractor session. So that's one of the ways that I've been working with it for myself.
That's such a good example. What I love about that example is it doesn't have any extremes. Like you said, you didn't force it and you didn't abolish it. Like you were just kind of noticing, well, there's a part of me. And even that language, that term, a part of me, I think what's so cool about this sovereign body somatic practice is we start to notice there's so many different beings within the body. There's a part that really doesn't like that smell. There's a part that actually kind of likes that smell. There's a part that doesn't even care about the smell. It's thinking about breakfast. It's like there's so many different parts. And one thing that's really beautiful about this non-dominating work and instead relational work is all those parts get to be seen by us. So we don't have to think we have to make a certain decision or have a certain belief. We're able in that moment to see, well, what arises? So like you said, just by even the awareness of that part, the breath, which is like letting that part breathe through you, created a certain space and capacity and maybe even witnessing, which then didn't find it offensive anymore. And that's like a transformation, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think what's really great about that as well is we think of the words transformation and we think like, I'm going to make $1 million instead of 10,000, but this could be a transformation. Like the smell of something no longer offends me in this moment. That's a huge transformation. So it's really good when we do these practices to notice like mundanity is really magical. These little things that happen second to second when we're practicing this embodiment work, it's like so big and far out. And then it builds something greater, like you get to go have body work, which actually works better because your body is creating more capacity. So that's a gorgeous example. I love that. I'm going to say that the list of who I'm going to call next, the next three, so you can all kind of prepare yourselves. I'm going to Lena next, then Karen, and then Colleen. Okay. So Lena, go for it. Tell us what you're hearing. What's coming up for you?
Just reflecting on what you've all said and how the mind races and wants something else, but the body remains still. It's primitive compared to how our minds behave, and we want so much, and that unification between the mind and the body can create stillness. I think you've talked about the sort of non-dual self that I think, or I will speak of that, a non-dual part, and listening into that, though that offers the loving perception of what the body wants. When you were talking, I thought of language, and often I lost words when talking about the body, but Luis, your course and your teachings have enabled me to find language for things I've always felt. I come from an animist background, so these ideas of relating to beings that aren't just the physical beings, the spirit world, the trees, the oceanic world. That's like that phrase that sticks with me, is being in relation as opposed to in domination. It just sits with me really well, and I find that when I begin to listen to my body, I don't tend to have the same words for it, but through listening, the whispers that Gina, you mentioned, the whispers, I begin to maybe describe through some sort of like gesture, or it's here, in my chest or my knees, or and the more work I've been doing with my body, the less less I am able to language, because I think we can communicate without the words sometimes still. So it's a journey, and I'm looking to enjoy the whispers and enjoy and listen in more. And I have this conflict where how to do this, and in the reality of where I'm at now, where I have to work, and in this the worlds of London living is difficult to find that balance. Those are my thoughts right now. So.
Those are lovely. I love that you said the word gesture, because when I was saying about body speaking sensationally, gestures are a huge way the body speaks. And one of the simplest gestures over the years that have helped me and a lot of people is just noticing where the shoulders are, right? And I know for me personally, and I saw some of you like relax when I said that. What for me personally, my shoulders were always going up like this. Like I was just living like this for probably 15, 16 years. And then when I started doing somatics, I noticed, oh my gosh, this hurts. This doesn't feel good. And I started realizing the difference of just my body speaking, saying, I'm scared. When shoulders are going up, it's saying, I'm scared. And so I would start to notice when the shoulder was going up, okay, there's something unconscious being remembered or being sensed in the moment. So gesture is one of the great whispers of the body, isn't it? And when we develop with these gestures with our developmental trauma, we don't know that they're a gesture. We just think that's what our body is. That's what it's doing right now. which is true, but it's not the fixed state. It's just a state that's so familiar. We don't have a lot of reference for it otherwise. So gestures are such a great way to kind of notice what's my body remembering or holding, or sitting with. Do you want to say
Always,
something about
yeah, I think the language that you've offered through the course, that was what happened. I was liberating myself, and I was able to see the body and myself, and not sort of be the problem, or be the trauma, be the anxiety, but actually the body is experiencing it. And I think that was the most beautiful separation that I worked with for a long time after, actually, and I'm still working with.
So glad you said that, because I forgot about that. I remember that happening in your cohort now, and I remember with you and how you shared that. And that's another added bonus, if you will, about the sovereign body practice for those of us with trauma, is we stop identifying with it. It's like, oh, that's something my body's holding. I'm not trauma. This part of my stomach has trauma charge, but I'm not that charge. That's in my body. And then, just like Gina was saying in the beginning, that relationship of listening to the body, asking it, then you get to actually relate to the trauma instead of identify with the trauma. That's a huge shift. That's like a life-changing shift. For me, it was, right? So I'm really glad you said that part, because I forgot about that jewel. Karen, I'm so curious what's coming up in you, what's percolating. What do you want to share about this practice for yourself?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of great stuff that's been said. I mean, as I'm listening, I can feel my heart racing a little bit, trying to kind of like notice it and be with it. But I feel I've been very confused by the sovereign body. And I feel like it's just recently that I feel like she's starting to trust me a little bit more. Like she's trying, like, not that I think I was afraid of the sensations. I still am at times, like that fear of what is this, what's going on. But I feel like either the two of us are coming together, because I feel like it's almost been like this huge disconnection between the two of us, this head kind of dragging along this body who doesn't want to do so many things. So yeah, it feels like recently, like I said, it feels like there's a bit of a merging coming together. And I feel like she's starting to trust me. And so recently, just awareness is like I'm walking and I'm feeling a lot of anxiety in my chest, and like kind of like an aching and just sadness, and like really noticing. So instead of being afraid of it, really like being with it. And so yeah, recently I was really with it, and I noticed how it started to kind of relax and have some ease. There's been things lately like wanting to do certain things, or things I feel like I have to do, where I'm like, oh, I don't think like I'm kind of referring her more to it as a she, like as she, because it just feels like more relation to her by talking that way. But anyways, so just noticing like, oh, like when I feel like I come into the body, I feel like, oh my gosh, she's so tired. She really needs rest, because I haven't really, I've been ignoring her for so long, and not really, not just not listening to her, but just being mean to her by either forcing things or, like, trying to think of an example, but, forcing her to do something, or talking badly to her, not seeing her for what she really is. So yeah, I do feel like it's still a journey for me. I feel like I'm still on this journey of getting to know her. Yeah, it's been very interesting seeing. Sorry, there's a train going by. Seeing the relationship come together of like getting to know the language of what she's trying to say, instead of being afraid and trying to run from it. Really just being kinder to her.
That's so beautiful. It was so much you said that I thought was really important. When you said just now, even like you were saying about being mean to her and ignoring her. And I just wanted to bring in how you opened your share about being afraid of the sensations. Because when we talk about ignoring our bodies and we talk about being mean to our bodies, forcing our bodies, it really comes from that place of being afraid of listening. When there's such a lifetime of not listening, the body has a lot of loud expression because it's been oppressed. So it's just like the Dr. King quote, about I'm horrible with quotes. I'm already forgetting how it goes, but it's essentially a riot is the language of the unheard. I believe it's around that, and it's really important, and that's what happens in our bodies. Like our bodies have these huge expressions, riots, whatever we want to call them, because they haven't been heard for so long. Not because we're horrible people, because we don't know how to listen, number one. And then when we start to listen, again, sensation is how the body speaks. That's a high sensational experience. It feels like death, literally. It feels like a heart attack sometimes, or I'm going to pass out, or everything's going to close in on me. So there's a very understandable, like innocent, distractive response to that, because we don't have the capacity to sit with it. So I'm happy you brought that part in for people listening to the body. For some of us, especially I think for all of us at the beginning of the process, is not fun. It's not like this, oh, I'm listening to my body, this is great. Depending on how much is in there already, it could be horrible, it could be painful, it could be scary, it could be repressed memory. I mean, so much is in there. So to also remember when we do this practice, at first it isn't gooey and lovely and relational seeming. It can feel almost abusive when you're listening to it. And then over time, like you said recently, and you've been doing this work for a while with us, which is good. I want people to hear, like, it takes time. And then recently you felt this merging. And what you said here about when I come into the body, I notice how tired she is. That's the sentence right there. That's the statement that helps me understand the sovereign body. That's kind of where I came to. If we all hear that statement again, like when I come into her, or whatever pronoun you use for your body, when I come into her, I notice how tired she is, which means that body was having an experience that had nothing to do with you, that you didn't even notice. So that shows us that even dissociation shows us the body is its own being, or else when we left it mentally, it wouldn't exist. It would just sit there and do nothing. But that's not the case. It does so much without us. So that practice of I come into my body, oh, then I feel where they are. That's a really gorgeous example, somatically, of the sovereign body. So I love that, Karen. Thank you for that. Colleen, what's stirring? We're stirring the cauldron, and we have our last ingredient. Its name is Colleen.
Everyone, put your helmets on.
This is the spice. We're gonna put the spice in.
Da, 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 da. So it's so important. That whole idea of the divided will, right, is so important for me, especially as a practitioner of manifestation, growing up in a metaphysical home. I was always like, why am I not manifesting this, that, the other thing, the finances, the concept and the idea that capacity could be involved was beyond the aperture of what I was able to see. I was like, no, I want these things. I've prepared. I've done the boards. I've done the blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't happening because of that divided will. And as an animist, it did not even dawn on me to apply that to my body, to her, as Karen would say, right? And as Ishel would say about that colonizing, that dominating, that controlling the body, telling the body what to do, and like modeling after this patriarchal timeline productivity type of thing. And after years of touring as a musician, I toured myself to death. And I thought I was, I'm an artist, I'm doing this thing, but it wasn't creative. It was repetitive. It was taking everything out of me. And my spiritual practice was very much based on let's expand and ascend. Let's go so far into our head and separate so completely from our body that we don't even need it anymore. Okay, doing this work with you has turned that completely 180. My spiritual practice is now based on going deep into the body. That is where my my spiritual path and that embodiment, let's say, you talk about embodiment and how important that is. That is the most important thing to me right now. That is what I shoot for. When I go deeper into my relationship with the body, I go deeper into my relationship with the earth. That is what brings it in. I don't have to go out there and grab it and create it. It's like, no, I will draw those forces in from the four corners of the earth, because that part of me that has been seen, heard, felt, dictates the capacity. And so I check in with her all the time. I have a new practice just from what you have taught us. A new practice came up this week where there was a lot going on. I couldn't fall asleep. And had the covers up and I was like, come on, I just got to fall asleep. I got to fall asleep. And I went, no, no, no. Hey, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe yet? And I felt no. So I patted some pillows around me. I got the weighted blanket out. I pulled it. And all of a sudden she said, yes. And there was this little giggle, right? Bam, I was out. I woke up like 5 hours later, And so now I ask my body, do you feel safe? What will it take for you to feel safe? And then I do the thing. And one more last thing I want to say, struggling with for so many years with autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, being bedridden and being in a wheelchair at one point, I had looked at my body like I was in opposition with my body. It was my enemy. Doing this work with you has been so important, because I was like, sure, Bessel van der Kolk, yeah, the body keeps the score. Now what? Because I'm thinking the body keeps the score, but you have given us the vocabulary and the toolbox to be able to check in and be like, okay, what's going on? Oh, you know what? You were protecting me. Oh, okay. You did this so that this wouldn't happen. You did that so that this wouldn't happen. You were protecting me. So just to sum it up, the idea that the body is separate is crucial to my path of embodiment, period. And I just kudos. I know we're all here. We've all done the classes, but kudos, Louise. It's just magic. This course is magic. Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm so happy you talked about capacity and manifestation. I think that's such a great piece to bring in about sovereign body practice and embodiment. Because when Michelle was talking earlier about the moon and the sun and these beings of time that are so far out, even like things we can't even imagine, I'm sure that we find that in our body too. Like when Colleen was talking about, sometimes it can almost be traditional or popular to do, I don't know what we call manifestation work or astral work, where we're leaving the body, right? And we start really honoring isn't the right word, valuing the practice, like how much I can leave my body behind. And I totally get that, like on one level, because it can be really far out to leave your body. And then there's this reality of, but even inside the body is so many galaxies and universes. And so when you're saying embodiment, connecting to body is connecting to earth, I mean, absolutely. And from that self-connection, that relationship to the body I have in this lifetime, there's this deep security. And I agree, manifestation turns into this actual capacity building practice. So instead of I'm manifesting this, it's, oh, I see my desire. What's my capacity for the desire? And then we just bow to the capacity, right? And then as the capacity gets bigger, we go deeper. And then from our security, these things just land into our basket. It's not this colonial concept of I have to go conquer. And we think of manifestation as like, I need to go conquer the world. I'm going to put it up here. I'm going to see it. I'm going to get it. I did it. Yes, it was all me. It's like, that's so activating. What is it like if we just build space and let it fall into our body when our body's ready for it? So I really appreciate that nuance for us to hear and sit with. And Gina, you're kind of like the head bruja here. Like, tell me what you're hearing right now. What's coming up?
What keeps coming up for me is this idea that I've had to sort of learn since I've been on the sort of the plant path and the self-evolution path for the last couple of years. And once you turn that page of self-discovery, you're inundated, right, with all the gurus. Like, I want to take this class, this course, right? And so there was one point I was in 5 different classes. And I was like, girlfriend, you are doing the most. And it was almost at that point, I got an invitation, and it was, first, calm down and don't outsource your authority. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And so there's no way to fully embody what someone is giving you until you figure out a way to make it your own. And so because someone has a toolbox or practice kit that works for them, doesn't mean it's going to work for you, or it could work for you, but just for a few moments before you figure out how to make it your own. And that is the work for me now, because I figured out a way to trust my own way of knowing that I could sit and engage and take in what I'm supposed to. But I always ask my body, like, how is this landing? Does this make sense? How does this feel? And even, I'm in the process now of deepening my understanding of topical herbal medicine. So then I was in all these groups and I'm following, and okay, this has antioxidant properties, this has anti-inflammatory. And it got so bad that I was breaking down my plant allies into chemical constituents. And I'm like, okay, I've gone too far. I like the way rosemary smells. I like the way hawthorn berry makes me feel. I don't care about how these other people engage these plants. How does my body respond? And so I started putting more awareness and more power and more authority in my personal experience, because I had to get away from externalizing that authority, because I stayed disempowered and I stayed activated. So now I'm in a rhythm that feels more grounded and more respectful, but it was chaos for a long time before I was able to fully commit to that practice. And I still mess up, right? Don't get it twisted. I still get crazy, and then I have to bring it back.
What are you feeling as you're telling us this? 'Cause I'm feeling emotion. Like, what's
I'm
coming
feeling
up
a lot of activation. Because like, even just the telling of the story, I'm reminded of the time when I was like in all the different classes and I missed a replay, and then I had, oh my God, but what if I don't learn this? And then I won't know enough to do this. And oh my God. And Jesus, like, even talking about it. Like,
can we be with that together for a minute? Can we be with it? Because like, I think it's so powerful that it brings it back. And this is good for us all to kind of feel like, let's feel the activation and just take this moment to relate to it. And as you're feeling it at the same time, notice how it feels in your body when you are aware of your own inner guidance. Like, tell us what that feels like when it comes through right now. You take your time.
It's a submission to, or surrendering to, I think, to the work that I'm doing. And it reminds me that, even though I have this practice, it's very easy still to kind of get caught up. And it's okay to, like, that's life. I'm human. And, I don't have a contract with existence where I get to like have it all figured out all of the time.
That's right. That's right.
And actually, that's part of the beauty of it all.
Agreed.
Yeah. So the fact that I can be activated lets me know that I'm alive. And I was really loving what Lena was talking about earlier about kind of overly languaging with the body. And so, especially since I work with topical remedies now, I'm always touching myself. I know that sounds a little I
No,
mean,
good.
that way
We're
too,
good.
but
We're good with that. We're good.
in largely non-sexual ways, but sexual too. It's all, we're all of that. We're sexual beings as well. But like throughout the day, I'll just put my hand on my shoulder. I won't say what's wrong or why are you tense. I'll just put my hand there, like, I'm here. Like, that's all I need to say, I'm here. And I'll be in line at Trader Joe's and I'll feel some sharpness in my belly and I'll just slide my hand underneath my shirt and just, I'm here.
I really love that you're saying that. And even as you're saying it, like, feel how it feels even in this moment. Just say, oh, I'm here. And we can all try that if we want. And those of you listening, it's a really fun practice. Like, notice a part of your body that's constricted, or like Gina said, a sharp pain or something that just doesn't feel comfortable. And just putting your hand there, or your awareness or your breath, and just saying, I'm here. It can be that easy. I think what I love about what you're saying and what Lena said, there's two parts. The first part for me is somatic is without words. The body doesn't have words. The body has sound and vibration. Like, the human mind created language, but the body is just it's just sound and feeling. So if we're just purely sensational, we can do this amazing trauma healing work, body tending work, decolonizing the body work, just through sensation without even context or content or inquiry. That can all go out the window. That's fun. That's fun to do. And it gives us a lot of, ways to describe it to each other intellectually. But just to say, I'm here, as almost like a reflexive practice, eventually, like a habit that gets formed, such a different way than dissociating from that part that wants the hand to touch it. And just that presence of I'm here, we almost immediately will feel it settle or build the capacity to speak more. But there's some kind of response. There's a relationship that occurs. And something, we were talking about the inner authority and outsourcing it. And when I was thinking about what Colleen was saying, what's so cool about this work for me is I find this somatic work is again, it's a post-colonial technique to get decolonial. It's like an interesting, science, if you will, and technology that makes sense to our post-colonial minds and intellect and terminologies and such. But it's really getting us back to what our body already does. And that's why I find it so far out. No matter who takes this course from any culture or country or language barrier, we all immediately connect because it's body. We're just with our bodies, which already know all of this. Like, we're catching up to what our bodies already know. And so it's not like Luis's work. It's something that I learned from my own body, from someone else's body, and then we get to keep passing it around. And that's my favorite part about it, is there's no copyright, there's no trademark. It's like our body gets to do that. It's incredible. And then it just keeps waking up to itself even more, and we keep waking up to it. I'm gonna call Nichelle first, then you, Colleen, because Nichelle had their hand up.
Yeah, there was some weaving that I was tapping into around the authority and the body, and even a little bit of some of that autoimmune internal Gera, that war. And one of the things I think that helped me to be able to come to this work was a couple of years ago, I learned through human design as a manifesting generator that, and with sacral authority, which was like the chakra that I never paid attention to, was like, from the waist down, just ignore. And so coming into that work of learning how to listen to the sacral chakra as a way to get connected with the body through the literal guttural sounds of mm-hmm or mm-mm. And for that, I guess there's different ways. Human design is very complicated, but for me, that takeaway really helped me to start to get to sensitize and listen to all of my body when I was making decisions. And I've recently been reading this book. It's the Lady's Handbook for Her Mysterious Illness. And it's by Sarah Ramey, and it goes through how women in particular have had just this huge increase in autoimmune disorders over the last 30 years or so. And the connections that have been made in the microbiome and the relationship that the microbiome has with the body, and how basically leaky gut has sort of made all of these sort of antigens, these foreign, feel like foreign invaders in the body, causing inflammation, and that sort of war that's been happening in us for those of us who have autoimmune conditions. And just this idea that the way that the medical science has sort of framed autoimmune as war, right? And that, like, actually, that's not what's happening in my body. I have 4+ autoimmune conditions, and that's how that's been referenced. And so even that shift of like really starting to listen to what my body is saying about what I'm putting in it and how it feels about it, and paying attention to what comes out and how things are going with that, and just sort of really starting to make those connections. I've noticed that there's the relationship that exists within me of all of these other beings that are there as well, right? So anyway, that's what I was.
I'm glad you reflected on that, because the autoimmune piece, I find that so transformational as well. When like you said, like modern medical science sees autoimmune as like the body is against you, so now you have to like do something against it, and it's just this constant war. Whereas when we go into this place of sovereign body, and we go into language as expression and symptom as expression, we just see that these are all expressions. They're just like blossoming, unfurling expressions that come from different states within. So when you talk about these like different beings within that could create the expression of a rash on your forehead, for instance, it's just kind of like listening to the rash, like looking at it, feeling it. How do I relate to it? There's so much beautiful relationship building we get to have in response to our autoimmune conditions that we lose if we see it as war, or we see it as bad, or my body's against me, or it's mean, all these things we think about our bodies, when really it's actually doing something really sophisticated to keep you alive and to show you there's something going on inside. Like it's super generous of the body in a lot of ways. It's just like when we raise our hand in Zoom, like that's what the rash is. So I love that. I think that's great for any of you. I know a lot of people listening definitely have autoimmune conditions from the letters I get. So it's nice to hear, what's it like to relate to your expression. I like to call it expression, what's it like to relate to it? What comes up when you do? I think it's really special. Thanks for that, Ishel. We have to close soon. Colleen, do you want to give us a little droplet?
I don't know if it's a droplet, but it's something that I feel like is not, we have forgotten to cover in our class, where I feel like, and even the listener, when you start this journey of listening to the body, can you give some tools and talk about a little bit it? And I've seen this come up in comments, and people are talking and sharing. People start to have a really hard time showing up for their jobs. Everyone realizes they don't like their work, they don't like their job. However, we're not all, millionaires. And how do you draw that line between creating the capacity for being an adult and being responsible and doing things that you don't always feel like doing, and also resourcing for self-care? Can you talk
Absolutely.
a little bit about that? Okay.
Well, I was just thinking of, when Lena was saying how London is so different, that like being in the world of London, and that structure, that being of London, that creature London is, after being with the more primitive body-based, earth-based body practice, it's like two different worlds, and it is. And it's funny because I just had an episode with Bridget the other day about her book, Trust Yourself with Money. And one of the things that we talked about is exactly what you just asked. What's it like when you're in these situations where you're waking up to your body's needs for the first time ever, and it's saying to you, everything you have made in your life is opposing me. It doesn't work. It doesn't feel good. It's why I'm sick. That happened to me. Like, I completely know how that feels. We want to, again, if we go to the mind, if we think about the mind, we want to kind of like figure it out in a linear way, and we want it to be really quick. This is where I almost go back to Ishel's practice and work about decolonizing time. We really, again, the mind, the body shows us, let's say, this job that I go to 5 days a week isn't working for me. And now that you're listening, you're aware this isn't working for me, right? Which then means when you go to that job, you're going to feel it not working for you more than you ever did before, because you're getting embodied. And that's why, to go back to Karen, a lot of people don't want to be embodied, because then you have to start feeling your truth. And that's super inconvenient, especially in a culture that's all about productivity and work. So if we think about that decolonizing time practice, and we think about time as a being, as difficult as it is in those moments, we want to do the same thing. We don't want to put like a timestamp on our recovery, like when I get the job in my life, or when this is supposed to end, or I can't do this. That's going to create activation. Just like Gina felt talking about that experience of outsourcing authority and the activation that came over her body. Imagining, okay, this needs to end tomorrow because I can't do this. That thought is going to create so much more activation. So the word here is resourcing, right? How do I resource? I'm going to go back to Gina's first example, the share at the beginning, the titration with the water and the temperature. It's literally, how am I with my body when I'm at the workplace? I say this a lot to people who have to fawn for their work, people in customer service. How do I do this to make a living? Because there's no other option for me yet. There will be, but not right now. How do I get through this? It's all about the awareness and the witnessing of those parts. So again, I'm using everyone's examples. They were so good. Going to Laura's example, the part that was really opposed to the scent and the part that was okay with the scent, and the breath allowed them to kind of like merge and be heard and create capacity. It's the exact same thing in this case. I don't like my job. Not just I don't like it, but it doesn't work for my body. So I'm going to be with the part of my body that doesn't like it as I'm there. It could be as simple as like I stretch my arms more. I take more bathroom breaks. I have a snack instead of skipping. I don't drink coffee in the morning, and it makes it a little easier until 12, or harder. There's different things we'll learn, but it's like actually using the situation that's uncomfortable to learn what your body needs capacity wise to actually get through the situation. And then when you get home, that's when you get to be with yourself. That's when you get to have your own rules and create your own renegotiation of boundaries. What a lot of us do when we're disembodied and we start becoming embodied, and then we feel how bad it feels to live a certain way or be in a certain position, we forget that, okay, well, if I stay with this part that doesn't like that, I get to then care for that part later. So my shift is over, I get home, I might have 2 hours, I might have 6 hours. It's all going to be different for everyone listening. Whatever you have, that's your moment to tend to the part that wasn't able to be fully tended to at work. And by doing that, we build our capacity. So we continue feeling what doesn't work for us, and we want to. And at the same time, we build the capacity to not be traumatized what doesn't work for us. And that's the difference. We're uncomfortable, we're frustrated, we're tired, we're in pain, but we're not traumatized from it. That's a huge difference. And that comes from building the capacity in between the moments, on the lunch break, on the way home, on the way there. Like every moment you can do, you build that capacity. So anyone listening to this, it's a great question and a good thing for us to close with, is just really remembering it's not about perfect. Just like Gina said, it's not about like never getting activated. It is I always say trauma is your birthright, which sounds very weird because I don't mean abuse. I just mean like the body's response in really big things to events around us is going to happen. It's how we are designed. So until we die, we're going to be activated. We're going to be triggered. That's all going to happen. It's our response to it. That's what gets to change. So even if your life can't change, your response to your life gets to change, and that keeps you from being traumatized. So even if it's painful, you still get to be connected to the pain with capacity, which means you can endure it. And it's a whole other way of living versus I need to change all this so I can finally be happy. We all know from our experiences and other people we worked with and seen, you can change everything and still not be happy because your nervous system's still responding to everything the same way. Okay. So it's just a good thing to remember. And it's kind of like a blessing when we have that opportunity to practice it. what I want to do to close is, first of all, thank you all for coming. This is so gorgeous. It's like the best panel I could ever ask for. I want to go through each person and just have you close by saying any last, not really questions. I don't want to open up another discussion, but like a last offering, whether it's the work you do, how you see yourself in the world, something coming up, even something for people listening about this discussion. Just like say who you are, one final thing that you're offering to the world or that you're feeling right now, and then we'll go to the next person. And we'll start with Lena.
I'm not ready. Oh gosh.
That's totally fine with me. How about this? Raise your hand if you're ready. That's how we'll do this. Good listening, Lena. Good listening. Laura.
I just want to offer the analogy that I use for kind of negative thoughts, but I think it also applies here, which is the example of a mud pie. That when a kid offers you a mud pie, you don't have to eat it. You don't have to take it on and make it, digest it and make it part of you. But you also don't yell at the kid and make the kid, tell them how bad they are, make them go away. Don't, most of us don't, and I just think that like all these experiences, we can see it as a gift, but we don't have to make it part of who we are. So I wanted to offer that. And I want to thank you, Luis. This has been great.
That's beautiful closing. Thank you, Laura. Who wants to go next? You can raise your hand. Colleen.
What I'll close with is one of the gifts was accepting that life and being alive on this wonderful, beautiful, sexy earth of ours is a cycle of rupture and repair. And we do not have to live in a state of trauma response to experience those. We can be in the flow when that happens. We can experience it with grace and ease. And if you are new to the whole idea of looking at things through the somatic lens, or you're just starting to feel your body, the biggest tip that I can share is if you just start feeling something and you don't know what it is, you don't understand it, just stop and say, okay, hey, what do I need to feel safe right now? What do I need to feel safe? Put your hand over your heart and just trust that deep inside of you somewhere will always have the answer, and trust that.
Beautiful, Colleen. Thank you. Gina.
One thing I learned in one of my plant diets was, this is like, on day 3 of not eating, it was a 5-day fast. And I was really hungry and I was in a lot of pain. And what kept coming up was, you can get through anything if you can figure out a way to be thankful for it. I was like, holy shit, you're asking me to be thankful for the fact that, it's day 3 and my stomach is, but that was transformational because I was able to see how powerful the experience had been and what I was getting out of this hunger. It was a transaction to which I was just given way more than I was giving. And it leads me to another quote that someone sent me the other day that kind of jives with it, which was, you can't change what you don't bless. So both of those things really help me when I am feeling challenged. And I'll leave you guys with that.
Oh, I love that so much. Thank you. It's gorgeous. Karen.
I just wanted to say, like, I've been a mom since I was 17. I got pregnant very young, and my son has a disability. So I've been not just a mother, but a caregiver. And I think, as parents, we can often ignore our needs, our body, because his needs always just seemed more important than mine. So I guess the thought of that it's never too late, I guess, that you can start to uncover and be with, because I think there was always a part of me that just felt like something's just wrong with me. Like not even let myself believe that it's trauma or just years of not knowing how to listen. So being really new to this, the somatic work, I feel the thing that's really been helpful for me recently has been just naming it at times, like, oh, like I said at the beginning, this is racing heart, or like your heart's racing, or oh, you feel really tender right now, or you're really like just giving it a voice, basically, like any sensation. So trying not to, and I guess it just helps how my mind overthinks or wants to make sense of things, that by giving it a voice can sometimes help me kind of like just make it feel like it's heard, even though it's not necessarily language, it's like translation. But yeah, just that's really been helpful for me lately, is just naming the sensations that I'm feeling and just saying, okay, I see you, okay, and watching it kind of melts a little bit and just relax. So that's been really helpful for me lately.
That's a beautiful, thank you. That's a beautiful offering. Thank you for that, Karen. Lena.
Yes, I'm ready. I teach children, currently 3 to 4 year olds, and my invitation would be to follow them, watch them, and see how pure that reaction is, their reaction, and allow yourself to cry the way you want to, stomp your feet the way you need to. I think these children are my teachers. So that's what I'd like to offer.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Shell.
The thing that was really coming up for me and was alive was around this way of being that you were talking about, in noticing and witnessing the activations. And I've been really diving into Thich Nhat Hanh's work that has been just something that has been so connective for me around the Paticca Samuppada, the mutual co-arising, interbeing is really the easiest way that he spoke about it. And that place of yes and, when we're in those work environments and we're witnessing those activations and we're struggling with the knowing where we are and where we want to be, and sort of just sitting with that. And for myself, the place that I have found most easy to just get to a place of witness is to go and co-relate and be with nature, get outside and just sit and start to co-regulate with the world around me, and just get very present in the place that I am. And so I would just offer that for folks. For me, that's been what's helped me.
Thank you, Ishal. This has been so beautiful. I've loved this group from the get-go, from the cohort in summer. So it's so nice to see you all again, and maybe we'll do this another time. But I just wanted to say, just for everyone listening, these are incredible people that I got to meet through my course, and now you're my teachers. I mean, look at this incredible wisdom you brought today. It's amazing just to think that I get to experience humans like this. Like, I'm so lucky. I genuinely love you all, and I thank you so much for being here. And we can unmute like we used to and say goodbye, and then we'll sign off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much love.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Louise.
Thanks so much,
Thank you,
Louise.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.